Howdy all, and welcome to another vlog. Man, my beard is getting long. Aside from just like trim it, I haven't shaved it since this whole COVID shindig began. So it's getting real Viking-y. But I find I can do something with my mustache if I twirl it. I go from Viking to Jim Carrey from Sonic real quick. You may have seen outside recently. It's could be described as uncertain. If you're making an important decision this time, like many people that are thinking about going to grad school are, this can put you in a tough place because you want to take that next step, but things don't always go as planned. In my degree field, which I have 2/3 of now, just finished my first year, we talk a lot about probabilities because we're dealing with satellites, rockets. It's pretty risky business. Things aren't always going to go the right way. Or in the case of some satellites, you're sending them into a place where, really all you know is the laws of physics, and that's about it. Not much about the rest of the environment. So you have to learn how to operate under things like uncertainty. And we've developed a lot of tools that I think are useful, and I think teaching people how to think like a rocket scientist about uncertainty right at a time when the world is really uncertain probably isn't the worst idea there could be. And just to kick off the discussion, I have a question, and that is, to you, which is worse, a lightning strike or a paper cut? Now you're probably thinking, oh Mike, that's a dumb question. Of course, the lightning strike. Like, one nick, put a band-aid on it, whatever. The other one, I'm a piece of toast, I have to go to the hospital. And I don't mean to ask the question in and of itself. It's a leading question into another one, which is, which are you more prepared for? And unless you're a very special kind of person, and I know folks that study lightning, they don't carry around a lightning rod in their back pocket. But if you look in your medicine cabinet, bathroom, maybe in your kitchen, some first aid kits, there's probably band-aids or some sort of something to clean out the cut. And that is because of probability. Now, yes, a lightning strike and paper cut, two very different consequences. I'm not trying to equate them. And it's a little bit of an extreme example, but I use that to illustrate the idea that sometimes we make decisions looking only at the raw effect of the decision without looking at the probability of it first. If you're thinking about going to grad school, you might look at just the raw financials of having to pay for it versus, another school without thinking about weighting that with what's my probability of getting into those schools. And in space systems, we use an interesting tool. It's a little chart. It is a severity versus probability graph. And this has a bunch of different names. It could be called a risk chart, a risk burn down matrix, a risk burn down chart. And really, it varies from place to place, but it is a very useful tool. I use this in my personal life to make decisions about decisions under risk. And on one axis, you have severity. So if this thing were to happen, how bad would it be? Give it a score 1 out of 5, something like that. And then on the other one is, well, how probable is it? This brings it back to the lightning strike example. A lightning strike is far more severe. In that implies hospital visits. It implies maybe a lifelong disability, something like that. Whereas a paper cut, it's throwing a band-aid. However, the lightning strike is going to happen a lot less frequently than the paper cut. So the next point kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. I was a big StarCraft, Age of Empires, Civilization kind of fan. Played a lot of those games. In fact, in quarantine, I've been playing a lot more of them recently too. And there is this idea of the fog of war. concept, but as it applies to the game, I think it might be a little more useful. The idea that things aren't really firm, you don't understand or know them until you get there. In these games, there's just this haze around the map. You kind of know the general landscape, but you don't know where other players are until you go there and see. And it's kind of the nature of the future, right? It's this amorphous blob, kind of the way things might go, the general landscape. A lot of these blogs are to give you the general landscape of grad school, saying, this is how we got in, this is what grad school is like for us, to give you an idea of the shape of the kind of information you're looking at. But for you personally, you won't know that until you actually go to grad school. And one of the ways to cut through this fog of war that we use a lot in space systems, there's a technical name for it, which is failure modes and effects analysis, but I'm not going to drag you through an aerospace engineering lecture. The whole idea is you just think through the kinds of things that could happen. And the major innovation that rocket science has brought into it is kind of gates. What are the major events, and what are the decisions that can happen at those events? Kind of decision trees, really. And in the case of getting into grad school in a pandemic, your decision tree is going to change a little bit, and there may be more branches, but your major events might be graduating undergrad, or if you're coming from a job, leaving your job. If you've left your job, have you gotten into a grad school? If you've gotten into a grad school, can you get a job there to pay for it? Or can you get student loans to pay for it? If you can get some means of paying for it, can you find a department in the area? These kind of secondary decisions that go along with it, and just charting along the course and kind of what's the most probable path, the few most probable path, really gives you a leg up. It helps you chart out kind of what could happen, and even though it's not telling you which path will definitely be yours, you have a couple options to choose from, which you might not have if you were just looking at the fog of war directly. And the last one, it's kind of aerospace. We didn't invent it, but could be described as, rainy day funds. But one of the innovations of aerospace in this idea is not a rainy day fund for purely money. Like, don't get me wrong, should have a rainy day fund for money, but also a rainy day fund for time, other resources, things that aren't monetary. And this is good because it gives you wiggle room. If something goes wrong, you don't have to think on the fly to find a solution. For example, I know a lot of people I've worked for will give me an earlier deadline than their deadline for something, just in the case that I need more time, or they need to do something themselves to my work before submitting it to a higher boss or something. In fact, I had one of those deadlines earlier this week. So having this sort of banked time, banked resources, banked money will help you in the long run, because if something does not go according to your plan, or one of the branches on your tree goes the opposite way you thought it would, it gives you some wiggle room to make decisions at a more leisurely pace and not have to make a snap decision, which is, time to make decisions is pretty valuable in the realm of making a quality decision. So I hope some of these tools have been useful to you. If you have questions about it, please leave them in the comments. I'll try to add some graphics and make it as digestible as I can, because usually in a class along with these comes big equations and fancy softwares and stuff like that. But the base concepts can be done by anyone, anywhere, and I use them to make decisions. I know friends that use them to make decisions. NASA uses them to make decisions to launch rockets. So I know sometimes our personal needs and our futures sometimes can be left behind in the grander scheme of a country or a university, or when the world is shifting. But those kinds of things are important to you, so I want to give you these tools to help you make those decisions that are important to you. But aside from that, this is my last vlog, I think. So I hope the vlogs I've given have been useful, and I'll see you soon.